Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast where we talk about motivation, experiences, and we explore the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared, and today we're talking about a disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. It is quite the event. This disaster happened in early February 2023, February 3rd, and it is such an interesting maybe case study or event that has happened. There's so much weirdness about it. We're going to talk through some of that today and what some of the impact has been. Ethan and we've talked about natural disasters before. We've talked about the Bhopal gas disaster where the entire city got gassed. We've talked about Chernobyl. We've talked about other man-made disasters. BP oil spill. I think we did 2 episodes on the man-made disaster spill. That was one of our most listened to episodes.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing, but this is in America. And I've even heard some people refer to this as the American Chernobyl. I think that might be 3 Mile Island, but not necessarily nuclear, but definitely chemical. And pretty crazy right now. And anybody who believes anything that the news is saying is probably misinformed. Not that we are totally informed, but we're going to kind of look at some of it and discuss it and talk about what's going on and what happened. If you haven't heard, maybe this will be a quick a 30-minute recap. So let's go ahead and dive into this conversation.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information.
And that, my friends, is called integrity. That's called courage. Now that's the stuff leaders should be made of.
Either you're somebody or you're nobody.
You're not the devil. You're practice.
All right. So as Jared was saying, this disaster that we're going to talk about is a train derailment that happened in the city of East Palestine, Ohio, a town of about 4,700 residents. That's about a half a mile from the Pennsylvania border. And so, as Jared was saying at the beginning, it's interesting because in today's media, it's all depends on like which news station you're going to. Are you getting your information from CNN? Are you getting your information from ABC? Are you getting your information from Fox? Are you getting your information from, you're getting different stories from all over the place. And it's kind of hard to gather a real understanding of, we kind of understand what happened, but some people are more focused on the effects and the long-term effects and how this is terrible. And then other people are like, oh, well, the mayor was drinking tap water on TV and stuff. And so it's just like, yeah, it was probably filtered through like a water pump they had underneath the faucet. It's just
Totally.
So the incident, right? What happened? The accident. So on February 3rd, 2023, around 9 p.m., approximately 50 cars derailed, and these are train cars, derailed in the city of or village of East Palestine, Ohio.
And that was in a train that was actually 150 cars long. So with the train itself, the train was 149 with 2 head-end locomotives and 1 distributed power locomotive. So like 1 engine on the front, 1 engine on the back, and then 1 like in the middle kind of. The one in the middle was between cars 108, 109, and 110. So there was 51 cars that derailed, and 11 of which contained hazardous material.
Yeah. So 11 of the derailed cars contained hazardous material, some of which were used to make different plastic products. But vinyl chloride was kind of the main chemical that was in quite a few of these 11, if not all of them. Vinyl chloride is a cancer-causing substance, chemical which is among other chemicals that are used in the creation of different plastics and things like that. So, according to some different, I guess it depends on who you're listening to. Some cases, supposedly the train was supposed to be marked as a hazardous material on board the train, but it was not properly marked. Number one, and it was some of the equipment, and that's kind of we'll go over to. Some of the equipment was actually faulty on the train that caused the derailment.
Yeah. So I had a little bit about the accident itself, and I'm sure that you'll have extra context there, Ethan. So the train was traveling about, like Ethan said, in the morning hours when it crashed. It was traveling around 47 miles an hour. The train, number 32N, passed 3 HBD systems on its trip before the derailment. And these HBD systems basically check the temperature against the bearings to see if something is wrong.
In the wheels.
The wheel bearings of the train cars. So at milepost 80, basically the suspect bearing on the 23rd car had a recorded temperature of 38 degrees Fahrenheit above the ambient temperature. The ambient temperature, I think, was 10 degrees at the time. So sitting at about 48 degrees. When the train passed the milepost 69, the bearing recorded temperature of 103 degrees Fahrenheit above ambient temperature. So you can see this thing is increasing. There's actually footage of this thing going by like a warehouse, and it's sparking like crazy, and the thing's red hot. So it's like off kilter somehow, or something's messed up. And then when it passed milepost 49, it recorded a suspect temperature that was 253 degrees above ambient temperature, which at that temperature, I think it's above 200, there is a verbal warning that is given to the conductor that this bearing is messed up. So apparently the conductor slowed the train and entered into a dynamic braking situation to brake. They braked and came to a stop. And it seemed like, from one of the articles that I've read, it seemed like they kind of looked out and they said, okay, we're at a stop now. And they look out and they say, oh, look, there's a fire. We must have derailed. Some of the train must have derailed. And that's where they found that cars, kind of in the 20s through the 50s, were the ones that derailed. The ones of concern, the tank cars, rails 28 through 31 and 55, were carrying 115,580 gallons of vinyl chloride. Anything you'd add to that, Ethan?
No, I mean that's spot on. And the interesting thing is that when they look back, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a couple minutes, at what they ended up doing a couple days later to get rid of, or to try to, I'm going to say air quotes, get rid of the vinyl chloride. But yeah, there's definitely fires that were on the tracks where these cars derailed. Basically, the whole length of the track where the cars derailed was on fire. And so that was kind of I read a report of how the firefighters came in to put out this fire, but there was such an issue with some of the chemicals that were already leaking out and were on fire and stuff, that the firefighters couldn't even get close enough to really fight the initial fire because of the chemicals that were involved.
They were already spilled and burning.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Chernobyl. Whenever all the firefighters get there and they're picking up like pieces of the core, thinking it's just like a rock, but it's like the nuclear core, and it's just like they have no idea what's going on.
Blisters his hands in 5 seconds. Yeah. Well, I had always. So let's talk about what happened next.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So 2 days after the crash, they were monitoring the whole situation, and some of these tanks were still leaking. I mean, they were there's still fire going on. Go ahead.
In that time, did they not get backhoes and try to pull these things out that weren't burning? I mean,
So
I couldn't.
the whole thing is that there was a serious concern that one or several of the cars were going to have a catastrophic blast, is what the governor of Ohio said. And so, as there were still fires, as the temperatures were raising, they were afraid that these things were going to blow up, and that they were going to be like catastrophic explosions. So they were hoping initially that it would kind of neutralize on its own a little bit, and they
Well,
could get in there and work.
Why wouldn't they like pull out the ones that aren't on fire away from everything, or like try to just get it away, or just remove it from the area so that it can maybe cool down or something like that?
Yeah, I have no idea.
They just left
but
it
what
all
they
in
ended up,
one big pile.
Yeah. So I don't know what they ended up doing was they ended up evacuating about 1,500 residents, and they initiated what they called a controlled release of vinyl chloride from 5 of the train cars to avert any of this potential explosion that might happen. And so what basically controlled release of vinyl chloride means is that they basically opened them up a little bit to release the pressure and lit it on fire.
Well, I heard they dug trenches along the tracks. And then they basically dumped the vinyl chloride into the trenches, which I don't know why they couldn't collect it from the trenches and
lit it and lit it on fire.
Well, yeah, why couldn't they just take it collect it in a bucket and then go put it somewhere else? But I don't know. I
don't know. I wouldn't want to be up there with a 5-gallon bucket collecting it into a bucket. But
if it's not already on fire, and they release it into, or unless it immediately caught on fire when they let it into the trenches.
Yeah, and I don't know how extreme. It must be a pretty flammable and combustible material. But you can see pictures. I'm sure you've probably seen pictures. We'll put them on Instagram and stuff as well. But just massive toxic plumes of black smoke raising into the air. And so it's interesting. I read another article that was saying 2 weeks after that they lit this stuff on fire, and it was just basically whenever you have a fire, whenever something is burning and the darker the smoke is, that is the dirtier a burn you're getting.
Yeah.
So if you have a very clean burning fire or something like that doesn't have any smoke,
like methane,
then basically
basically natural gas in your house. So
the fire would be burning all of the material.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was not. They were lacking oxygen, a couple of different components to make the fire strong enough to actually burn this toxic chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they were just aerosolizing it and putting it into the air.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks after the derailment, some of elected leaders and residents and scientists were kind of questioning why they did this. Was this the right choice? And actually, there's been some accusations that the reason why they did this was because that train track had been closed for 2 days, and the company, Norfolk Southern, they wanted to get the tracks clear so that they could keep running trains.
And they're the ones that decided to do the control burn, not the EPA, not the city, not the government. It was Norfolk Southern that decided.
They're like, hey, there's reports of their leadership just saying, hey, we need to get this track open, get this stuff out of here now. What's the quickest way to get rid of it? Just burn it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, without any kind of studying, is that the right thing to do or not? They're just like, well, I don't know. Let's try this.
Crazy. So some of the chemicals that were said to have leaked, that were a part of that, the EPA actually listed some of them. Vinyl chloride was the main one, which exposure is associated with increased risks of rare liver cancer, as well as primary liver cancer, as well as brain, lung cancers, lymphoma, leukemia. Some of the other ones are ethylexyl acrylate, which causes burning on the skin and eyes and coughing and shortness of breath. Isobutylene, which can make people dizzy, drowsy. Ethylene glycose monobutyl ether, which can cause coughing, dizziness, drowsiness, headaches, nausea, and weakness if inhaled. So it was other things too, not just the vinyl chloride. The vinyl chloride was what was used to make PVC pipes, and like you said earlier, certain plastics. So the increase. One interesting thing that I found is that when vinyl chloride is decomposed into gases or burned, it basically turns into hydrogen chloride and phosgene, phosgene. And phosgene is what was used as a gas in World War I, and it actually was a cause of the majority, 85% of all gas deaths, which was 91,000 people in World War I, were a result of this type of gas.
Chemical warfare.
Yeah. So that's how deadly it is. And essentially what it does is it gets in your system. You might feel okay immediately, but it basically makes you drown in your own lungs. And your lungs fill with fluid and you drown. And so, I mean, this is bad stuff. And that's what happened when you burn this vinyl chloride. And so there's a lot of stuff that is, and there's this massive plume. And so right now, the question is, well, what are they going to do about it? The weather, some people are saying the way that the weather did, it blowed. Some people are saying the entire Northeast was exposed to this because of the weather patterns blowing this plume of toxicity all over the Northeast. Some even say the entire East Coast. Not only that, the weather, the plume, but think about the water tributaries and all that kind of stuff, all the way down the Mississippi River, all the way down. I mean, it's like a central part of the country. And so it's pretty wild and a huge impact on everything.
Yeah, and I looked into some of the impact too, and there's a couple of different things to consider here. So we are talking about this about a month later, after the initial accident, and so it's interesting because the more time that passes, we learn there's more and more reports that come out that say, oh, actually, more chemicals were released than we first anticipated, or we've recalculated the exposure and it's getting worse. I think there's probably going to be commercials in 30 years that say, did you live in East Palestine, Ohio?
Did you live at the East Coast during 2023?
2023. If so, you could be class action lawsuits against Norfolk Southern.
I've heard there's already been like 13 or more class action lawsuits against them.
Yeah. And so I kind of looked into some of the effects. So there's a couple different categories, right? There's categories to environmental effects, as far as the wildlife goes. And so they were already seeing like 3,500 plus fish dying in local rivers and streams.
Mm-hmm. Because the stuff turns the water acidic. It changes the pH of the water majorly. Also acid rain, birds, frogs, fish. Even like I saw a lady, she was posting a video of a raccoon that was like walking and it was like literally about to die. And she's like, all the wildlife around here is like toast.
Yeah. So major effects in the wildlife, obviously you have to worry about they just dumping this on the ground. So where's that going to go? It's going to get soaked into the earth and it's going to get into the groundwater, or it's going to drain down into the rivers, which is going to go to bigger rivers and to bigger rivers that go all over the United States. Right. The second thing is the people. Jared shared some of the short-term effects of different aspects of this, but I looked at what are the effects of vinyl chloride exposure to the human body. And short-term effects are loss of appetite, weight loss, fatigue, impaired memory and concentration, mood changes, muscle weakness and tremors, skin rashes, and peripheral neuropathy, which is numbness and tingling and pain in the hands and feet. So those are kind of short term. I mean, that's potentially what you could get by just drinking water out of your tap.
Yeah.
And the long-term effects could be are more liver damage, nerve damage, a significant increased risk of cancers in the future, reproductive problems, as well as cardiovascular disease have all been proven as long-term side effects of exposure to vinyl chloride. And so I was watching this one video about this lady, and she lives there. She's like, my all my kids, she said, I can't be the only one, but all my kids are broken out in all these rashes. She's like, I've got 4 kids under the age of 6 or something like that, I think she said. And she was like, we can't drink water out of the tap. We're trying to, I can't, trying to bathe in the best that I can, and the water, this and that. And she goes, some people might wonder, why don't you just leave? And she goes, I can't. I can't just leave. Where am I going to go? She's like, I don't have the means to just pick up my life and leave.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of sad. It's like, what other options do you have? For me, yeah, if something really happened here, I could potentially rely on family or maybe have enough savings or whatever to relocate and start fresh somewhere else.
But your house is zero. Your business is zero.
Yeah, I mean, who's going
to want to move there?
What's going to be the real estate market look? I bet you get a house real cheap right now in East Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. This whole thing, but I think that the reason why this is so impactful is because the government is downplaying this. The government, Norfolk, the locals, the community, oh no, it's safe, go ahead and go back. They're all downplaying it. Remember, do you remember how many official deaths the Russian government admitted to as dying from Chernobyl?
It was like 31
people.
Oh yeah, okay.
Only 31 people died from Chernobyl. And so it's like kind of the same thing. They're like denying that this is like a major thing. And here's where we go down the rabbit hole. I think that the government, we know this. We know that the government doesn't give a rat's ass about us. And they are paying, I mean, with all these Twitter files that are coming out, we know that the government, the White House, paid Twitter to trash the Hunter Biden story. The FBI paid Twitter to ban certain people's accounts. And I'm sure that they do the same thing with Facebook and any other, and Google and other social media platforms. It's just that they're not on trial and their CEOs aren't releasing it. But so we know that the government's trying to control the narrative around things. And guess what the government is trying to cancel right now? TikTok.
Yep.
Oh, the Chinese are monitoring us. Well, no, the TikTok people aren't taking cues from the U.S. government, and that's where this whole thing has blown up, is on TikTok. All this East Palestine stuff has blown up on TikTok, and that is an avenue the government cannot control because it's through China. And so I think that really that's why there's a renewed call to ban TikTok because China's spying on us. No, really what they're saying is ban TikTok because we can't control that narrative. And just like with this situation here, we're getting absolutely, like, people are communicating with each other in a way that is more open than we would like them to allow them. We would like to control the box and the people who were able to speak in the public square, which is exactly what they've done with Twitter and exactly what they've done with Google and all these other things. I mean, Google's initiative was to make President Biden win. You go on Google right now and say Hillary Clinton emails, and there are no suggestions. You say Trump, and like the top 20 suggestions are like Trump's evil, Trump Russia collusion, Trump Ukraine collusion. You won't see Trump false dossier. You won't see that on there as a suggestion. So
no,
I think that this is such, like, the fallout of this is very interesting, the way that the government has reacted, because I think the people are really pushing back on this. And I know you've got probably other stuff to share as well, as specifically around the political timeline, Ethan, but I have one thing to share before that.
Yeah.
This is related to the CDC. So the CDC, interestingly, they changed the guidance on vinyl chloride exposure. right around this time. I say right around this time because
It was like 11 days
well,
before, wasn't it?
I actually looked at it before. It's time stamped and says effective January 23rd, which was 11 days before. But the actual like release date supposedly says February 9th, which is 6 days after. And so it's a draft toxicology update, and what it does is it's a toxicology profile of vinyl chloride, and it massively increases the lethal exposure for people from 100 parts per million to 100,000 parts per million, and then also
so yesterday 100 parts per million would kill
lethal.
you, but tomorrow, oh no, it's 100,000.
Well, it's retroactively, it's retroactively effective.
Okay.
So, as of the January 23rd, which just so happens
So
to
all of the tests they did before for how many years, and it was just like null and void.
Yeah.
Oh, we were wrong. We were wrong.
yeah, and it comes out like February 9th, so it's only 6 days after. And then this is retroactively applied. And they removed any of the mentions on the CDC website about, how this affects children. So if you don't trust the CDC, if you still have trust for the CDC at this point, you're probably, they just came out and they're just now admitting that the coronavirus came from the Wuhan lab.
Yeah, it came from. Oh, you mean it didn't come from a
bat?
People eating a bat
Soup?
in a wet market?
Oh,
that was
my
just something
gosh.
completely made up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, if 2 years ago, if we would even said that, we would have been hunted down and canceled.
Oh yeah, and there were people that were. You guys
Yeah.
are just fear mongers, all this kind of stuff.
They'd be knocking on the front door.
Yeah, our podcast would be canceled. But now, since it's no longer conspiracy theory, we can say it.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, that is interesting to say the least, that this gets released just right on time, to say, oh, well, I don't know who's looking at. I doubt any of those people in that country or in that area of the country are looking to the CDC for any type of exposure, for any type of guidance. But it makes you wonder, the EPA or the CDC that goes in there like, oh, when they're telling us, oh, the levels are fine. Well, what is that? According to what measuring stick? If they change the measuring stick, if I say, oh, your house is not flooded. If I change the definition of flooding in your house from being water 1 inch on all your floors in your house to, oh, no, now flooding means water is 10 feet in your house. And then I walk into your house and the water's at my waist. There's no flooding here. It looks fine to me.
It's not 10 feet yet.
It's not 10 feet yet, so there's no flooding. It's like, what? You just changed the measuring stick. And so it makes you question. I don't know if that's officially what they've done, but it makes you question anything that they're coming out with because they're just changing the measuring stick.
Yeah. So I had kind of looked into some of the politics of it as well. And there's just so much. And there's so many different people saying things about it. But, I mean, kind of three main people I would say that visited the area was the first really kind of big person to go was Donald Trump, which was on February 22nd. He went there and he brought a bunch of water and all sort of kind of stuff. And I mean, he's not even in office or anything like that, but he went there and he talked and he was campaigning or whatever he was doing, right? Then the day after that, Pete Buttigieg, who is the U.S. Transportation Secretary, who this is like his job is to take care of all of the kind of the transportation issues and conflicts or whatever it is all across the United States. It was 20 days later. In fact, on the day that it happened, and the day after it happened, or the day after it happened, he was tweeting about how it was he was driving on the road and he saw a construction crew that was not diverse enough, and how we need to bring diversity into construction crews in all aspects of jobs. Which it's like people are like, yeah, okay, that's good, but look, we just had a Chernobyl level event almost happen in this town that has the potential of affecting multiple states, and you're like, oh well, I'll go in 20 days and I'll look at that, and then he gets there and the reporters in his interview, I watched his interview, it's like 30 minutes long, And the reporters just ripped him a new one. They're like, "What took you so long? What were you doing?" And he was just like, "Yeah, I should have been here sooner, but we're all in this together, and we're blah 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 blah." And it's just like, dude.
Well, he was politically pushed into it, but also
because Trump went. It was the day he went,
Yeah.
the day after Trump did, and so he's like, "Oh, I guess I have to go now. Oh, geez, I have to do my job that I'm getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do."
But do you think none of those people in East Palestine? That's a Trump country, and so it's not politically conducive to him to go visit any Trump supporters.
I think that's the reason why
country.
I think that's the reason why Biden's never been.
Yeah, well, Biden
he doesn't care. He doesn't care about these people because they're not going to vote for him anyway.
Who does he care about? Ukraine. He goes and visits Ukraine.
Where did he go? Instead of
Ukraine.
going there, he went to Ukraine. That's that's like me and my wife standing in the kitchen, and my wife opens the refrigerator and goes, "Oh man, Ethan, we don't have any food. We need to go get some food." I would say, "Yeah, you know what? I'm going to order some right now, and I'm going to send it to the neighbors."
Yeah. Or
right? And it's like, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we need the food. Well, no, I think I'm going to send it to the neighbors.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so Biden goes to freaking Ukraine and pledges to give them $500 million additional on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions or billions, not hundreds of billions, but billions of dollars that we've already given them for whatever. It's just like,
to a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah, to literally a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah, it's insane. And you're like, what is going on here? It's just unimaginable. Like, I just don't understand, like, how these people can just totally ignore something like this. And then you got Norfolk, the actual company, they were going around door to door and saying, "Hey, we're here to test your water because we care about you. Can you please sign this paperwork?" And people were like, "I need my water tested. I'll sign that paperwork." But in the paperwork, it was wording saying that they agreed not to hold Norfolk liable for anything else beyond this point. So it was like a waiver of liability that they were having these people sign under the guise of, "Oh, let's test your water to make sure that you're safe."
Yeah. And then I saw a lady doing an interview about that, and she was like, she read it and she was like, "I'm not going to sign this. Why would I sign this?" And the guy's like, "Oh, we can't test your water unless you sign it." And she goes, "Okay, well, can I just have a copy of that? I want to review it, and then you can come back later." And he's like, "Oh no, I can't give you a copy. I can't give you a copy." So she like took a picture real quick on her phone of it, and they sent it to the governor, and the governor said, "Oh, I called Norfolk Southern and I ripped him a new one, whatever, and they just told me that it was an accident, that they accidentally gave her the wrong form. That was a different form for something else that was they gave her the wrong one." It's like,
oops,
dude. Do you think we're all freaking idiots?
Yeah, but they do. And then they're gaslighting us.
Well, they don't care. Yeah,
they don't care. And then they're gaslighting us. It's like, well, that was just an accident. It's like, well, Pete Buttigieg just couldn't make it here before that.
You're making a big deal out of nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Not a big deal when you can't even bathe your children because the water's going to give them skin rashes.
Yeah, and skin rashes and cancer, and your dogs are dying, and everything around your whole livelihood and your whole area is poisoned, and likely the whole eastern seaboard. So it's concerning to say the least. And now there's a lot of details that are still coming out. But
I always try to look and see, in situations like this, it's like, what are they trying to hide, right? Potentially, it's in the news here and there, but you really have to like search to find any specific details.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, what else is going on in the United States at the same time? Well, you have all these massive, the United States shot down 2 unidentified objects
that they couldn't find.
They couldn't find, one over Alaska and then one over Lake Huron.
Oh, it was it must have been balloons.
They shot them down, didn't even know what they were. And it's like, so I mean, we don't hear anything about that, right? But if you were to say anything about that, then and I'm not saying that they're freaking aliens. It could be a different country that's doing whatever, or these Chinese spy balloons. I have no idea what's going on, but still, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I feel like everything's just don't look at the man behind the curtain type thing.
Yeah, and the man behind the curtain, I mean, like, is like
senile.
Biden is totally lost. I mean, anybody who thinks he's in charge of anything is like themselves are probably out to lunch, because it's so obvious that someone else is pulling the strings behind the curtain here. And whoever it is wants a lot of money to go to Ukraine right now, and could care less about East Palestine or just regular, Americans in Ohio. And so it's, pretty concerning.
Trump supporting Americans.
Oh, those
or
are
Republicans.
The
just in
basket
general.
of deplorables. Maybe that's why. Maybe Buttigieg was like, "I'm not going to go visit a basket of deplorables that should be dead anyway." Maybe that was his response. Horrible. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is what's going on. Let us know what you guys think. It's pretty tragic. We are all about uncovering the truth here, and we're all about standing up for what's right, standing up for the people. And regardless of what your political affiliation is, you'd think that who wants clean water? You don't have to be Republican or Democrat to want clean water, or to not want to be poisoned by the air. I don't know why this is such like a political thing, or why no one's paying attention. We live in very strange times, and so it's almost like back during Hurricane Katrina, George Bush flew in a helicopter over New Orleans and observed the damage. It was like 3 or 4 days later after the hurricane hit, and he got absolutely destroyed for that. Maybe he should have done more. I'm not saying he shouldn't have, but at the level at which this has been ignored is like 100-fold worse than anything that Bush did, or didn't do with Katrina. It's just crazy the level at which we're seeing this blatant ignoring, and then I think trying to control the narrative and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm interested 10 years from now to go back and listen to this episode and to see what kind of information comes to light from here to then. We might listen back and be like, we were so off, or we were right on key.
Yeah. Well, if the last couple of years have shown anything, that don't believe the narrative that the news media is feeding you, because it's probably wrong.
Yeah, very much wrong and very much biased, and really in either direction.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this has been informative and maybe entertaining for you guys. But we love to talk about stuff like this. This is actually kind of a little bit of an extra episode because we had an additional week in this month. So this is a cool little extra news update that we did. But thanks for supporting us. Give us some likes and comments on our Instagram, on our TikTok. Also, if you could leave a comment and a rating for our podcast, we'd love that. And we appreciate you listening. Let's go ahead and build that creed together.
All right, let's do it.